GOP Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene says the commander-in-chief had put a target on her back with his insightful language, accusing her of being a traitor. Now, she claims her very life is in danger. After being labeled by President Trump as a traitor, a fake politician, and a ranting lunatic, GOP Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said that the commander-in-chief has put a target on her back, placing her very life in danger. MTG told CNN's Dana Bash on Sunday, quote, "The most hurtful thing he said, which is absolutely untrue, is he called me a traitor. And that is so extremely wrong. And those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger," end quote. The Georgia Congresswoman said she believes her push to release all of the FBI files related to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein triggered Trump's rage against her. Watch this.
I stood with President Trump when virtually no one else did. Campaigned all over the country, spent millions of my own dollars helping him get elected. And I think that's incredibly important. And I do support him and his administration. And I support them in delivering the campaign promises we made to the American people. His remarks, of course, have been hurtful. However, I have something in my heart that I think is incredibly important for our country, and that is to end the toxic fighting in politics. And this has been going on for years, and it has divided our country, split up friends and families, neighbors, and it's not solving our problems. The most hurtful thing he said, which is absolutely untrue, is he called me a traitor. And that is so extremely wrong. And those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger.
What do you think happened? What do you think is the reason for this?
Unfortunately, it has all come down to the Epstein files, and that is shocking. And, you know, I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children who are in terrible sex abuse situations. And I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that. I believe the country deserves transparency in these files. And I don't believe that rich, powerful people should be protected if they have done anything wrong. And so I'm standing with the women, and I will continue to do my small part to get the files released.
On Saturday, Greene revealed that in the wake of Trump's verbal attack on her, quote, "I am now being contacted by private security firms with warnings for my safety, as a hotbed of threats against me are being fueled and egged on by the most powerful man in the world, the man I supported and helped get elected. Aggressive rhetoric attacking me has historically led to death threats and multiple convictions of men who were radicalized by the same type rhetoric being directed at me right now, this time by the President of the United States. As a woman, I take threats from men seriously," end quote. Israel 365 News reports that the United States, they indeed orchestrated a joint statement on Friday endorsing, quote, "a pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood." That's what they call it. All as part of an effort to resolve the Gaza conflict. The statement was signed by Qatar, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Jordan, and Turkey. And it marks Washington's most explicit backing yet of a Palestinian state, even as President Donald Trump claims he remains undecided on the issue. The joint declaration goes beyond the conditional language of Trump's 20-point plan, which states that conditions, quote, "may create a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood once Gaza and its reconstruction advances and Palestinian Authority reforms are implemented." Instead, Friday's statement treats statehood as a certainty, calling the process, quote, "a viable path towards peace and stability," end quote, and urging swift adoption of a U.S. resolution at the UN Security Council to establish an international stabilization force in Gaza. Well, for decades, U.S. foreign policy, it was based on the creation of a Palestinian state. Two-state solution, it would create an unprecedented militarized Arab state inside Israel's borders, with its capital in an exclusively Muslim East Jerusalem. This, of course, would require a return to the ceasefire lines drawn up after the defensive 1967 Six-Day War that are considered by Israel to be indefensible against an Arab threat. By rejecting the two-state solution, President Trump negotiated the Abraham Accords. That was back in 2020, thus normalizing relations between Israel and several Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco. Israel Defense Minister Israel Katz, well, he responded with unequivocal rejection on Sunday, saying, quote, Israel's policy is clear. A Palestinian state will not be established, end quote. He vowed that Gaza would be, quote, demilitarized down to the last tunnel, end quote, and Hamas disarmed, whether by the IDF or an international force. President Trump's position on Palestinian statehood, it remains contradictory. Despite the language in his 20-point plan, he has admitted in recent weeks that he has not decided whether to back a two-state solution. Yet, the U.S. draft resolution being prepared for the UN Security Council explicitly includes the term Palestinian state. In Washington, well, they're leveraging the issue to pressure Saudi Arabia into normalizing relations with Israel. But the Saudis, they have made it clear that official ties depend upon Israel committing to a Palestinian state. Thousands of Muslims gathered for prayer in Turin, Italy over the weekend. This is not the Middle East or even North Africa. This video that I'm about to share with you is from Italy. Check it out. Well, if you didn't know, Islam, they're not there and they're not here to assimilate. Islam has come to Western nations, folks, to take over. And really, you can't blame them. Our Western political class and the globalist elites that they represent, they invited them into Europe and they invited them here into North America. They invited them here, most of them, by the way, being legal, with green cards. And they came, of course, with refugee status. They were given jobs in meat packing plants in the Midwest, yogurt factories in Idaho, and as cab drivers in New York City and Chicago. In fact, many were given government benefits along with a, well, full smorgasbord of rights. And anyone who doesn't like it gets labeled as an Islamophobe. Not a bad gig if you can get it, right? So maybe you don't blame the Muslims. They're just doing what, well, they were taught to do by their own book, the Quran. Immigration jihad. Infiltrate and take over. It's our own government that should not have let this happen. And it's our own government that should put an end to these migrations. And it also wouldn't hurt to put an end to the endless Middle East wars that drive refugees out of their countries and into the West. That, of course, has been going on for far too long. The neocons in Washington, well, they have the process perfected. Start a war, create refugees, bring them here as cheap labor, and they won't stop unless we demand that they stop. A few, very few, members of Congress have actually been calling for an end to these forever wars. People like Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, and of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene. But they're like voices really crying in the wilderness because they're so outnumbered in both the House and in the Senate. In the Senate, you have neocons like Lindsey Graham and Chuck Schumer. President Trump, for all his talk about being against forever wars, well, he looks like he's about to decide to throw in with Graham and Schumer when it comes to foreign policy. And while he claims to be the president that has stopped multiple wars from starting, we have several wars that are simmering right now in multiple regions of the world. Now, if Americans get sent into any of these theaters, the question is this: will there be a clear ending point, a well-defined exit strategy? Now, let's admit, this administration has done a lot of good when it comes to securing the border and really tamping down the woke agenda. But I think it's lost its way when it comes to dealing with the outside world. And if the neocons get their way, America is headed to war. We've even changed the name of our Pentagon from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. There's a lot of drum beating going on, not only by our own government in Washington, but by many governments around the world. You can hear the drums beating. The question is, where will the war start? How will we respond? I asked Gordon Chang last week on Brandon House Live, where will World War III start? In many ways, it's already started. Information war, the dollar war, economic war, drug war. But when it finally gets kicked off in a kinetic way, and Americans say, yeah, this is how and when and the day World War III started, where will that be, Mr. Chang? He said, I believe, Brandon, it'll happen right here on American soil, inside America. The attacks will start inside America. That will be when Americans realize World War III is fully underway. Well, let's pray that's not the case, but we better prepare accordingly.